What up, everybody? I always get excited whenever these video essays go up because there's a lot of work that goes into them. This is the first one I've done where I actually got some musical help from a friend of mine that is actually releasing a record. I will have a link to his record. The first two musical interludes, the intro, the first quote, and the first title screen. It's his music, and the rest of it, of course, was me. Because I don't have to pay for me. So we try to put together panels to have these discussions. And when I asked, I think I mentioned this yesterday on the main show. When I asked Pascal, I was like, "Who are we going to have with us on the show?" On the show, he goes, "We don't need anyone." So Pascal is definitely ready. Thank goodness it's later where he is in Miami. I think he broke fast a couple hours ago. So he's ready. He's rested. Fiery. Let's turn the music up for him. Please welcome, coming all the way live from Miami, Florida, the man of the Mau Mau Hour. He is the Pascal Robert.
Peace and greetings to the chat. Peace and greetings to the audience. Peace and greetings, Jason Miles.
What's going on, man?
Feeling good, bro. The show we did last night is doing well.
A lot of shows we've been doing lately are doing better than I thought. I went and checked some of the numbers for the audio-only podcast, and we are averaging now 10,000 downloads a week.
Wow. We also hit 9,000 subscribers.
We're over 9,000 subscribers. So I guess that means people care.
People care. I've been recirculating some of our older shows and literally using them as
you want to hear something funny? Want to hear something funny?
Go ahead.
So I was having a hard time turning off the Facebook memories, and anyone that is a Facebook friend of mine that doesn't know, Facebook I think it was like 2 years ago now, suspended my personal page, and the only page I had access to was my ex and I had a band, and she used that as her personal page for a long time. So that's why if you're Facebook friends with me, you're like, why is there so many pictures of this woman on your page that you're not with anymore? It's actually her old page, or our old band page or whatever. So the memories are no longer band memories. They're like, this is Revolution memories. And today is the 1 year anniversary of us interviewing Jared Ball.
Oh, word?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. So I was going to share that a little later. That was a good conversation we had. We talked to Jared for like 2 hours.
Why does it feel like it was 12 years ago?
Time during COVID, man. It's a whole.
Yo, bro, we've been doing this for a year and what, 4 months?
Some change.
Yeah, I was pondering. Yeah, we have an insane amount of content, man.
There's a lot.
We have a lot. I mean, I just realized just in the last month we have a lot of content.
There's a lot.
And you know what else? I don't know about you. Does it feel like more and more of the content is just me and you? Yeah.
If you really care to go back to the early live streams when I wasn't dumping them in the audio podcast, there was a time where, to give people an idea of how much content is out there, where this show was different from the audio. So there would be a whole different audio show that I would record.
We did start that way. I remember that.
And you were the one that convinced me, like, you have to stop. It's too much. And so thank goodness I listened, because I look at what we put out now. It's like, there's no way in the world that we could have kept going on that pace. And right. Plus, putting this for audio only helps out so many people. I get a lot of messages, even on a Patreon. You know, people are like, hey, thanks for putting the after hours up. I can listen to it while I'm at work and stuff like that. So that's dope.
I mean, we haven't been doing this a long time, but it feels like we've been doing this for 10 years.
Oh, dude, yeah, GG jokes. Them shows used to go on for 5 hours. Some of the shows were really long. Like me and Marcus have streams for hours. I was just trying to figure out which streaming services to use. So I would call up friends that were in bands, and we would just talk about band shit and how band shit relates to politics shit. And the show is a lot more streamlined. I definitely love it. I definitely love the fact that you guys pushed me to make the little intros that we were doing longer and do these video essays. Um, I'm also happy that you guys convinced me to do one a month and not one a week, as
That
this
was a good
last
idea.
one really, I wouldn't say killed me, but a lot goes into it as far as research and reading. Um, I reread a lot of Rob Larson's book Bit Tyrants. Rob Larson is a former guest on the show. He's been on the show like actually 3 or 4 times already. So I went and reread Bit Tyrants to get kind of more in the weeds on Bill Gates' lawsuit. There's another good book by a woman named Nicole Ashcroft, The New Prophets of Capital. I read that. As many articles as I could possibly find. I had actually done a show a year ago for the audio only podcast with a young man, a very young man. I think he's like only, he might even be 21 now, out of Argentina, that had hit me up and he wanted to do some things about talk about Bill Gates and philanthrocapitalism. So I was able to find some old articles that he had sent me, and that's why it's kind of Bill Gates centered. I just wanted to use him as kind of the template, but he is not on an island. He's definitely not alone. There's a ton of different ways that I did want this to go. I wanted to get more into hustle culture as well, because I do think that is a tentacle of this philanthrocapitalist mindset. I think green and eco capitalism is definitely a tentacle of this, and also prosperity gospel is a tentacle of this. But Djene definitely kept me a little more streamlined and focused. So, and that's what these recap shows are for as well. So we can get more into the weeds. So what did you think?
Man, let me tell you something. As I told you the first day, first of all, I watched the video essay
Mhm.
immediately when you sent me. Usually I might wait an hour or two. Sometimes I might wait another day. This one I watched as soon as it hit my inbox. I was like, all right, let me watch this. I didn't even know what the subject was going to be. So I'm
Mhm.
sitting down, I'm watching. I'm like, okay, I'm liking this. I'm seeing where it's going, and I watched the whole thing. And I called you. I think I called you immediately
Yes.
after I watched it. I told you that this video essay heavily triggered me. Not in a bad way, but heavily triggered me. And I think we talked for about 10 or 15 minutes
Mhm.
about what was that about. And then when you reminded me that we had to do Feldman that night. And I don't know if you went back and watched. I don't know if Feldman clipped our interview from.
I haven't seen it up yet. If it's up, I haven't seen it. Someone was asking me, and I haven't not seen it.
I don't know if you've seen the Monday episode from Feldman, but Feldman had both of us on, and then you had to leave early because you had to go do the
Sports
red
show.
zone, the sports show. And then David Feldman had me on for about another 15, 20 minutes. Bro, I went on a rampage on foundations and their role in black social engineering that Feldman was like, whoa, really? Tell me more. Yeah, I was going off. I was going off because I was so on a tear from watching this video essay. Because as I told you when I called you, there was a point when I was writing for Black Agenda Report that I had been doing so much reading in black political history. At a certain point, I had to stop reading because I was getting too depressed. I'm not joking with you.
I was
I want to tell you
Yeah.
something. I told Jeff Kennedy this.
Oh, shout out to Jeff Kennedy, by the way.
Jeff Kennedy's the brother we had on the show who did
It's
eugenics.
episode
Eugenics.
93 or something. That was a while back. But yeah, shout out to Jeff Kennedy.
And Jeff Kennedy's a brother who basically his focus is eugenics.
Eugenics.
Race eugenics, that's his thing. And I wrote a piece in Black Agenda Report, I think it was in 2013-14,
Mhm.
that a lot of people in the Black Chattering class wrote, that some people on this show might have remembered. The title of the piece was Black Eugenics. I want to tell you how that piece came about. If you would indulge me for a couple of minutes, Jason. I used to be Facebook friends with a black academic. I'm not going to mention her name. And she was talking about how she was really into W.B. Du Bois. And I was saying, not really a fan. One of the reasons, and I'm more kind of balanced in my critique of Du Bois now, but one of the reasons why I had really kind of like, there was a period of time I was really anti Du Bois, like really anti Du Bois. And the reason why I had developed into like an anti Du Bois kind of position is that I had recently finished Adolph Reed's book on Du Bois. It's a damn good book. There are millions of books on Du Bois, but the reason I liked Adolph's book, and someone told me, confirmed with me, that when that book came out, it was actually one of the better books on Du Bois that came out at that era. And the book has a long time, W. Du Bois and Fabianism and American Political Thought, something like that. It's a really good book. Not a lot of people talk about Adolph's book on Du Bois. And let me tell you what's really fascinating about Adolph's book that I've never seen anyone else do. He talks about how Du Bois's thought about race stems from the nature of higher education in the 19th century and how the politics of race and capitalism and where Du Bois learned his scholarship shaped his discourse. So there's a lot of stuff there about educational programs that were being financed by philanthropies, psychology, sociology, anthropology. There also is conversations about eugenics. And in that book, I learned about how Du Bois in the early 20th century was a big time eugenicist,
Mhm.
big time. And his type of eugenics was basically using eugenics to purify the race. In other words, you poor, grimy, dysgenic Negroes need to be clipped, as in sterilized, don't have no more babies. I
Mhm.
mean, there's a quote in this, and I'll tell you how, there's a quote I found where Du Bois says something like, Negroes are thrilled with their reproductive skills and happy when they increase. They don't know that people are like vegetables. It's quality, not quantity. I'm
Oof.
like, God damn.
Oof. Dr. Claus says Sergeant Waters from Soldier Story.
Right? So I read that book and I was like, I wasn't that big into Du Bois before, and I was like, why does this old man linger so much in terms of black political thought? We're gonna have to do a book on Du Bois, a show on Du Bois, but
Most
I'm gonna
black
get to the
folk.
point. I'm gonna get to the point. So this is black academic who teaches at a very elite school whose name I'm not gonna mention, who starts defending Du Bois on my page. And I'm going back and forth with her. I think Mark Lamont Hill jumped in the conversation. All of these,
Jesus.
this person happens to be a very famous, very well respected in the black academic circles. And then I was like, well, Du Bois was like a massive eugenicist. I was like, yeah, this guy was like horrible or whatnot. And then she was like, well, as if this is going to make it better. She was like, well, Garvey was a eugenicist. I was like, yeah, I'm familiar with Garvey because I started doing a reading about eugenics. And Garvey was also a eugenicist, but he was it's weird. He was like a pro-black eugenicist. Like he was one of these people who were like, dark skinned people need to breed with dark skinned people to tamp down the number of fair complexion Negroes we have in the race. And this is when I start to realize, a lot of these folks that we look up to as the vanguards of black thought from the early 20th century,
Mhm.
if we read their opinions and what they actually said, these people were sick as fuck. Excuse
Mhm.
my language. Like very disturbing, like very disturbing. So we go back and forth and about Du Bois and eugenics. So when I found out about this stuff, right, I immediately go on Google. when I'm having this kind of like Facebook battle. You know how I get these Facebook battles.
I do.
I do a Google on just black people and eugenics, right? I just randomly do. A woman's PhD dissertation comes up
Hmm.
called "In Search of Purity: Black Eugenics and the New Negro," like 1915, 1935. I'm like, this looks interesting. Yeah, I'm just skimming this real quick. You know how you look something up on the internet, it's kind of
Hmm.
long, but you don't have time to read the whole thing. You just kind of skim it. Yo, I'm like, I'm reading this, I'm blown the frick away. I'm like, is this woman writing about how like all of the talented tenth in the early 20th century were like race eugenicists against black people? So I'm reading it because I'm still going back and forth with the academic, and then I drop the link to this PhD, and everyone just jumps back like, "Oh, what the hell is that?" And I was like, "Oh, I got something here." So I was like, "Okay." I sat down and put in my file, right?
Hmm.
And I read it, and I was like, "Wow, this is interesting." I rest in peace, Bruce Dixon. I love Bruce Dixon. I talked to Bruce Dixon. I said, "Yo, Bruce, I found something. I think we got a winner." Bruce can't stand the black political class, hated black elites. And he was like, "What do you got? This is exactly how Bruce would talk. What do you got, boss? What do you got? What do you got, boss?" And I said, "Man, I got this woman's PhD where she basically lists with sources how a lot of these talented 10th racial uplift Negroes were basically like Nazi like Negro eugenicists against poor and working class black people." He said, "Really? Really?" He said, "Well, see if you can find the woman. Maybe we can invite her on a Black Agenda Report radio show and blah, blah, blah." So I Facebook search the woman. I find her and we connect. We become Facebook friends. And I'm like, "Hey, listen, can we connect?" So on and so forth. And she's like, "Yeah, whatever, fine." So I sit on this for like months. And I'm doing, writing every now and then for Black Agenda Report, so on and so forth. Then I used to talk to Bruce Dixon like 3, 4 times a week sometimes, right? So I'm talking to Bruce in one of our regular phone conversations. He's like, and this is Bruce. This is classic Bruce. He said, "Hey, boss, you think you can get a little 500 words for Black Agenda Report on that little eugenics thing?" So I'm like, "Yeah, I think I could pull it off, Bruce. What a problem." I hadn't really delved deep into the piece.
Hmm.
I started reading the dissertation. I didn't even read the whole thing. I'm just looking at major quotes. I'm like, "God damn, this is insane. This is ridiculous." So I got the major quotes. Jason, no bullshit. I wrote the piece in maybe an hour. Tops.
Hmm.
Tops. I sent it to Bruce to edit. He published it. It went up. I used to email articles out. Bro, I got emails from people who I don't want to name names, who are literally on like network television,
Hmm.
big time black chattering class,
Hmm.
asking me to console them. And literally like, "What does this mean, Pascal?" I'm like, "Bro, I'm just like some regular, like, no name, nobody, not an important guy who just writes for Black Agenda Report. I know you all read, but and I mean, people are emailing me like, "Oh my God." Because the way I framed the article, I mean, I can read the article now, but I don't know we want, because I don't want to take away from what Jason did. I, I read enough of Adolf's work to really help frame that period. We all know what Souls of Black Folk is, which is the book that Du Bois wrote in 1903. But what I learned from reading Adolf's work is that that was just not a book. That book, when it came out in 1903, was basically a clarion call. It was a shots fired to university pedigreed blacks to circle the wagons. And like this, we have to address what's going on with Mr. Booker T. Washington and what's happening to our people. So this book, when Souls of Black Folk comes out, it's basically like a 3 alarm fire for all of university educated Black America, which is like no more than 3% of Black America. What is ironic, Souls of Black Folk comes out in 1903. The Boule is founded in 1904. Alpha Phi Alpha is founded in 1906. All of the black fraternities are founded within 3 or 4 or 5 years right after Souls of Black Folk. So, in other words, what I'm saying is that this book is the shot heard around the world that basically gets the Talented 10th Black Elite Project unified and together, right? And what disturbed a lot of the people who love those Negroes from that era is the way I framed the article. I start talking about souls of black folk and how it was basically a cri de guerre to unify the black elites. And instead of saying about to unify them to do this great work, I basically go on to say to unify them to basically start this eugenics program of advocating sterilization and depopulation of black people. So I flip the positive spin of the souls of black folk on its head and basically turn it into a sick Afro-Nazi eugenics project shotgun. And when you read the rest of the piece, it goes there. And when I got the responses back, this is one of the biggest problems I have with when I write for Black Agenda Report. I'd write something, submit it, and I wouldn't reread it.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of the first pieces I reread. Jason, I bullshit you not. I had nightmares for 3 weeks after reading that piece. I couldn't write for another month. It disturbed me that much. Because one of the problems, it's not a problem, but like people used to, who's read my writing, they would all say to me, they were like, man, this stuff is really intense. And I was like, what are you talking about? Because part of the problem is that I would write all these things and I wouldn't go back and read them. There are times now where I read things I wrote when I was writing at Black Agenda Report and when I wrote Functional Book. I said, God damn, what was I smoking when I wrote that shit? Good grief. So, that piece disturbed me so much. I was like, oh man. So I start getting feedback from people on that piece. And that's how I got in contact with Jeff Kennedy. So Jeff Kennedy Facebook friended me, right? And I was like, all right, who is this guy? And then he inboxes me. He was like, yo, brother, we gotta talk. I was like, wait, who is this cat? He inboxes me his number. And then so I called him. He was like, hey man, he's like, listen, man, when did you start studying eugenics? I was like, studying eugenics? I was like, bro, I never studied eugenics. I wrote a piece on eugenics. Jeff, who lived in D.C., but who was going to Union Theological Seminary and had Cornell West as a teacher, Jeff is telling me, he was like, yo, man, you don't understand what you did with that piece. I was like, what are you talking about? He was like, man, you know how many people you done effed up with that, man? I was talking to Cornell West about that the other day. I was like, what? I said, you mentioned that article? He was like, yeah, man, we were talking about that in class. I was like, damn. And then Jeff is basically telling me, he was like, yo, man, you sent a shockwave through these talented 10th Negroes with that black eugenics thing, man. And I was like, really? He was like, yeah. The woman who wrote the PhD dissertation, Chantella Sherman, that I used to write that article, no one had even heard of her thesis before. She took the dissertation and put it into a book and basically started just self-published and put it on the internet. People started buying that left and right. And apparently, when I started finding out, I was like, Jeff was like, yo, man, this whole debate started a whole kind of sea change in dialogue and conversation about eugenics and race and this and that. And Jeff, who's like Mr. Eugenics, he's telling me, he was like, yeah, man, you have no idea. Because I had been reading Black political history enough, and also talking to Jeff, what I realized is that in the contemporary Black chattering class and the Black liberal elite, the project of racial uplift of the talented 10th era black elites of the early 20th century is sacrosanct. And the reason why it's sacrosanct, it's the first iteration of the black political class being weaponized. Basically, you can make the argument that the early 20th century, or what some people call the New Negroes, were the first manifestation of the black political class in the 20th century. So if you understand that, what you realize is that for all of the future iterations of the black political class, who basically get their marching orders from that first iteration, the New Negroes or the Talented Tenth, those people are sacrosanct. So when you have a book, well, first my article, but then a book that names Mary McLeod Bethune, Du Bois, people like I mean, all Charles Johnson, all types of like this. I mean, these people are like laureates in Black history, and then you're reading how these people were like horrid eugenicists that despised poor and working class Black people. It jacked everyone up. It jacked everyone up. So the point I was trying to get to Jason back onto the foundation stuff is that in that period where I was reading a lot of Adolf's stuff for the first time, one of the good stuff I like, great things I like about Adolf's books is that you know how a lot of academics, when they write a book, all they do is cite a footnote to the source and that's it. So unless you read the footnotes, you really don't know what the source is. One of the things I like about the way that Adolf writes is that he'll include the title of the book and the author in the argument that he's making. And you'll be like, oh, okay, this is a good book. Let me check that out. So I might read 2 or 3 of his books, and I might end up obtaining 6 or 7 other books just because of books that he mentions in his actual text. And what I'll find is that sometimes the books he mentions are actually better than the stuff he actually writes. And one of the consequences of reading his stuff and doing just that is that it took me down a rabbit hole of buying books about historically Black colleges, Black higher education, the founding of HBCUs, the founding of all of these civil rights organizations. And where that took me is an interface with the foundation world, to take half hour to basically get back to the subject of this show and Jason's video essay, is that what I'm reading about, that at one point, no joke, folks, I had to just put down. It was too depressing. It was too depressing. Because I'm reading these books that are basically telling me that from literally the point of emancipation of Blacks in the 19th century, like 1865, $1 million foundation capital are enticing Black leaders and Black communities already to socially engineer them in directions to protect the interests of capital and throw them under the bus. And one of the places they do this the most is via education, the development of Black schools, the development of academic institutions, and it's always done to neutralize more radical politics, more radical political options, more radical. I mean, and I'm not gonna lie, at a certain point, you just, when you're reading this stuff, you're like, oh, I mean, we all don't want to be conspiracy theories, right? Conspiracy theorists. But when you're reading stuff and it's like not a conspiracy, and you're like, this is this transparent? You've got to be kidding me. Folks, it disturbs the F out of you. It disturbs you to no end. I got a book here called The White Architects of Black Education that talks about the men who were the founders of historically black colleges. The White Architects of Black Education is written by a man named William Watkins. M2 Cent, if you could look up the link for that, that would be very helpful. The White Architects of Black Education by William Watkins. That book and another great book, The Education of Blacks in the South by James Anderson. You guys have got to get those two books. If you want to read two books about how the ruling class interfaces with black interests that will jack you up. I mean, like you got to sit down. If you drink, have a drink, alcohol, tea, or whatever, smoke, roll a blunt, just to chill you out. Get those two books. I guarantee you will be all messed up. You will be all messed up. Like I couldn't read those books in one sitting. Like I'd read like 10 pages. I was like, yeah, I gotta get back to that next week. It was too disturbing. It was too disturbing. And just to prove that I'm not pulling you guys' legs, I didn't tell Jason, but I posted, if you guys follow me on Instagram, since Black History Month, somebody asked, so the two books, Kushlik, are The White Architects of Black Education, William Watkins, and the second one is The Education of Blacks in the South, James Anderson. All right, those are the two books. Since Black History Month, I've been on a tear of reading, like getting as much scholarship from two like laureates of Black thought. E. Franklin Frazier, who wrote Black Bourgeoisie, and Carter G. Woodson, who wrote oh my God, how can I forget The Miseducation of the Negro? And one of the things I'm saying to myself is that it's sad that in the minds of most Americans, white or black, they think the only intellectual from the early 20th century is Du Bois. Because these guys got some amazing stuff. But to get to the point, because I'm hogging up literally Jason's show, is that I got something, and by the way, I'm going to tell you a little secret, right? It's between me and y'all. I love getting books about old black intellectuals that I know most black academics have not read. You know why I know they haven't read them? They're written by white people.
That's fair.
So I got this book, and I had a feeling. I said, I have a feeling not too many black people have read this. And the reason why is that, number one, I had never heard this book mentioned by any black people before. And the person who suggested it to me was a white person. So I was like, I'm going to get this. And it was a white person suggesting me. I'm going to give you a little secret. I want to play my own hand. Anytime a white person suggests, particularly if it's a white person on the left, suggests I get a book about a black figure that I've never heard before, instinctively I'm like, oh, this is gonna be a good one.
Josiah Rector.
I said, oh, this is gonna be a good one. I just know it. I just know it. This dude got me E. Franklin Frazier Reconsidered. This is the only biography of E. Franklin Frazier that exists. It was written by a man named Anthony M. Platt, who ain't black.
Well, the whole show we did on Hubert Harrison, who writes the definitive Hubert Harrison story is Jeff Perry.
Right, exactly. That's a perfect example. Perfect example. Let me give you a gem.
Michael X.
Jason, can you indulge me, please?
Go for it, brother.
Let me give you a gem that my man Anthony Platt drops in this book. This is page 23. Indulge me, if you will. The recruitment of prospective Afro-American intellectuals into higher education was achieved, but not motivated by corporate philanthropy. Far-sighted foundations such as the Rockefeller Foundation, Rosenwald Fund, and the Russell Sage Foundation began to provide scholarships for black graduate students and to finance research on Afro American communities. This is a quote by E. Franklin Frazier. Quote, it seems that ever since the Negro has been free, noted Frazier in his typically sardonic manner, some foundation has watched over his destiny. Right after emancipation, the Peabody Fund was giving him wrong advice. Then later on, the Rosenwald Fund corrupted his leaders. Y'all know you know what the Rosenwald Fund is, right? You know what that is?
Indulgence.
That's Sears
Indulgence.
Roebuck. Rosenwald is the family Sears. Rosenwald is the family that owns Sears. You guys have never heard of the Rosenwald schools? Guess who controls something like 50% of black secondary and public schools throughout Jim Crow? The Rosenwald Fund. Check the rationale. This is the kicker. I mean, you would think this would almost have to be a conspiracy. Literally, when I read this on Feldman, he was like, "Is this a conspiracy?" And I was like, "Check this out. Get ready, kids." Concerned by the volatility of race relations and the increasing militancy of the new Negro, some business and political leaders looked to higher education as a way of training future leaders who would steer an alternative course to the African American socialism of the Messenger and the Pan Africanism of Du Bois and Garvey movement. As one sociologist warned, there is a large and steadily increasing group of men, more or less related to the Negro by blood and wholly identified with him by American social usage, who refuse to accept quietly the white man's attitude towards race. Basically, what this book is telling you is that foundation capitalism in the early 20th century wanted to steer black people away from the two things these ADOS fools hate the most: socialism and Pan-Africanism.
I mean,
And
that
they were
is.
putting money into graduate programs, recruiting. Guess who they're recruiting? The same black people who would be the talented 10th new Negroes. Literally. So, in other words, what I'm trying to bring you guys around to is that the same talented 10th Negroes that our political class looks to as their forefathers were socially engineered to be placed there to neutralize Negroes away from socialism and Pan-Africanism.
And it's still working today. I mean, it's still part of the plan today. In a lot of the work I was doing, I don't know if they care as much about the socialism aspect, because I think it's just easier to push whatever your agenda is through education. And as much, and we don't really talk about it that much. I think we'll mention it from time to time, but we haven't done a show dedicated to charter schools. But the charter school movement, especially in the early 2000s, was kind of massive. And Bill Gates
Charter
was one of the,
schools are the Booker T. Washington industrial education movement of the 21st century.
and I think a movie that did a lot of harm with the charter school movement was a movie called Waiting for Superman. Before I even knew much about charter schools, I knew a lot about that movie, and that's a Bill Gates produced. He had some funding to do with Waiting for Superman, which is the story of kind of charter schools are the only thing that are going to save these young black kids from themselves. And there's a younger, but I think he's about my age, black mayor. I think he's a mayor of Vallejo, California. That's very pro charter school. And again, he sees it as like, well, this is the way we even out education is going to be through these charter schools, because it can specifically be for our people, quote unquote. So I think that's fascinating. When you see the history behind it to neutralize any sort of radicalness, and now it's more like, well, I don't know if you guys are going to be radicals, but we're definitely going to get you guys on board with the idea of black capitalism.
But it's
Yes.
all a demobilization technique, Jason.
Hmm.
I
I
mean,
mean,
listen. Let's call a spade here.
mhm.
What we're I mean, listen, we're not saying it. This is it. Listen, this is scholarship. This isn't conspiracy theory. This is there's footnotes here. You guys can Google Anthony M. Platt. This guy is a well-respected scholar. On By the way, he does a lot of scholarship on juvenile justice. As a matter of fact, he's an old school cat. Check him out. Well, what this is telling us, right, is that someone said fraternities and sororities. What did we say early on? Du Bois in 1903 writes Souls of Black Folk. 1904, the Boule is founded. The Boule, by the way, is Sigma Pi Phi. It's an adult, not college fraternity, adult fraternity that a lot of like working class black people have a lot of conspiracy theories about. They think they're kind of like the Black Illuminati. It's
Mm.
not that deep, but basically they are like a very like within black circles. A lot of black men of note and women of note are in the Boule. All right, so you have the Souls of Black Folk in 1903 is written. The Boule is founded in 1904. My fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha, was founded in 1906. You have Alpha Kappa Alpha, which is the Vice President Kamala Harris's sorority, founded in 1908. You have Kappa Alpha Psi, 1911. Delta Sigma Theta, 1913. Omega Psi Phi, 1911. Phi Beta Sigma, 1914. Zeta Phi Beta. You get the point. All these organizations are fixtures of the new Negro moment, where the clarion call of Du Bois is energizing the people that these foundations were financing to study Negroes to digress them away from what? Socialism and Pan Africanism.
And another thing that I found fascinating in reading some of the articles on Bill Gates was on how large his foundation was and how his foundation had infiltrate. I shouldn't say infiltrate, but yeah, let's say infiltrate the Obama White House. There were so many people. Arnie Duncan is one of those people. There were so many people in the Obama White House that either had worked for the Gates Foundation or had gotten money at some point in time from the Gates Foundation. That the charter school movement became kind of a pet project for Obama. Someone said on here that it was also a war on teachers unions. That's definitely part of the subtext of Waiting for Superman is that it's teachers, and that becomes Bill Gates' whole rallying cry behind this standardization of education. He literally says it is a quote: "The only way to solve poverty is through education."
Yes, because we're not going to fix power. But he says we know you can teach a poor kid with,
Yeah,
to be well educated.
we know there's
We
there's
can do
good
that.
schools and bad neighborhoods. Yeah.
We don't have to fix poverty.
Hmm.
We'll just fix education.
We'll fix education. We'll standardize it so it'll make it easier for me to create this software for it, and then I can start putting Surface tablets in public schools and charter schools, wherever the hell school I want to put it in, opposed to these iPads,
Well, let me
which
ask you
I
a
thought was
question.
also kind of
Let me ask
interesting
you a
and
question,
fascinating because
Jason.
there's always a financial motive behind it, and I think people look at charters or Common Core as it was some sort of failure. And I don't know if it was necessarily the failure that people think it was, because the amount of infiltration that administration had to be able to pay for studies on both sides of the spectrum. He's paying for studies in far right think tanks, and he's paying for studies in liberal think tanks. The consensus is the standardization of education is what needs to be done. And even if it's not Common Core in schools anymore, with COVID, which was kind of a bit of a boon for people like this, is the idea of now digitizing education. We can do everything remotely. Anything you want to learn, you can learn it remotely.
Well,
And
Jason,
let me give you the software to do it.
indulge me. Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Remember what we talked about when I was on Majority Report, when I was on Ben Dixon? I said that one of the things that Bruce Dixon Glenn Ford taught me about the rise of the fourth iteration of the black political class, the neoliberal version. They said there were what? There were five men who were the trial balloon of who would be the first black president: Cory Booker, Barack Obama, Adrian Fenty, Hal Ford Jr., Artur Davis. What are the similarities? All Ivy League or elite, very close to proximate education. All corporate funded. What's one thing they all are huge pushers of? Corporate charter schools.
Yep. That's another thing they liked about the charter school movement was the corporate charter schools. Franchising education. And the one thing, and I wanted to talk about this Thursday, and I'll be brief. We've been going for 49 minutes, so it's been a while. Is the way in which we're so capitalist realism is so a part of our lives and a part of our thinking that sometimes we don't realize how much a part of our thinking that it is. And a way in which these guys rise in the 80s, and the very neoliberal 80s, there's a reason why I start that video essay off with that very infamous scene from the beginning of the movie Wall Street, the greed is good speech. When Michael Douglas's Gordon Gekko character is given the greed is good speech, if you remember that movie, there's people walking out of the room because it is so kind of disgusting what he's saying. And his character, who is supposed to be a corporate raider, is what they were called back in the day, insider trader, becomes Charlie Sheen's fantasy of what success is in that movie. And when you think of Bill Gates, the reason why I juxtaposed it with around that same era, a Bill Gates commercial for Apple, or him being on a Macintosh commercial, is because we always look at these guys as the antithesis of those financial capitalists of Wall Street. They're not slick. They didn't wear suits. They weren't taking limos to work. That's also why I put the kind of the joke part in for Mr. Show about the boss that just wanted to have fun and was friendly, but was kind of a fascist in the office, because that's what a lot of those guys are. These friendly fascists, their way or the highway. So where a lot of people don't like Anand Giridharadas because he is a liberal, what do you guys call him? You guys say rad libs, whatever the box is you want to put him in. He's definitely not a socialist, but his critique on this world in general, I think, is right on, and I think is extremely important, because he's one of the few people that stays on calling it out.
He does. I mean, okay, yes, he doesn't have a hammer and sickle, and he's not talking about the 18th Brumaire or whatever else. But it's a good class analysis.
It is. It's extremely important, because, and the reason why I bring up capitalist realism being part of our life, we so are okay with putting a value on everything that we don't even realize it. I like sports. It's fun. A young man recently died that played professional football. His name was Dwayne Haskins. He was 24. I don't know why he was walking on a highway. I will say this. I live in Mexico. I see people every day walk across the highway, ride bikes across the highway, jump over the divider, wait for their Uber to pick them up on the side of the highway. So and driving in the South, where he was in South Florida, Pascal, I'm sure you've seen people run across the highway. It's more common than you think. I don't know how that young man got hit. I don't know. I'm not really following all that close. But one thing that kind of shook me was he was a number one draft pick that had a lot of potential, and it wasn't panning out for him. But he was still young. We don't know. He was getting a second shot. We don't know, right? One of the commentators, one of these sports pundits, called him some derogatory name, like a washout or a has-been or something along those lines. And Some people took offense to it, like ex-teammates, of course, took offense to it because they're like, "Hey, he was my teammate. This is my friend. He's a human being." And it's like, I get why you have an attachment to him, but I don't think you understand why it's okay to think that this person is less than. In all the sports, the reason why I wanted to do a show is because when I listen to these guys talk, they talk about people that may not be the best. They may be having a bad year or an off time. And so they're talked about as if they are worthless. You have no value to me. My fantasy team isn't scoring. I lost money betting on you. You are a worthless person. So when Bill Gates and the rest of the lords of capital want to finance or commodify every part of your life, you don't care. You're not going to push back. Me and Pascal were talking about on a personal call, like Venmo is commodifying. Hey, let's go out to dinner. Oh, I don't have any money on me. Oh, don't worry, just give me back next time. Now I can Venmo you the $5 I was going to give you or whatever, and they're going to take a cut of that. That's huge. That's where I worked before I came here. I was a very tiny fly on a very big wall where peer-to-peer payments, people were like this. Like, you know how Pascal gets when he's reading something juicy and the fingers get to working? That's how these guys were getting with peer-to-peer payment systems. They loved them. Because every single transaction you're going to have is going to be made in your digital wallet.
Let's make this clear. The foundation world is how capitalism neutralizes the left and radicalism by funding it. Let's make that clear. This is one of the linchpins of how American empire outpaces the British in the 20th century and the late 19th century is because of the elaborate foundation philanthropy infrastructure created out of the Industrial Revolution and the Gilded Age that gives these capitalists so much power. Do you know that how much of compared to the American GDP? Just on a humble, I was researching the University of Chicago because I don't know if y'all know this. University of Chicago is, as an institution, was created by John D. Rockefeller to protect capitalism and to create academic social engineering to make sure that capitalism, particularly of a very rapacious type, i.e., neoliberalism, dominates the world. So I become familiar about this through reading the stuff I get introduced to by reading Adolf's work. And by the way, this is not something that Torre or Adolf told me. I learned this by talking to them. And it was like, yeah, that's true. You kind of figured it out. And I'm like, yo, this is true. E. Franklin Frazier comes out of Chicago. The Chicago School of Social Work and Sociology starts the National Urban League. Carter G. Woodson did his undergrad at the University of Chicago. Charles S. Johnson, big-time black sociologist, comes out of Chicago. Guess who founded the University of Chicago School of Sociology? Robert Park. Do you guys know who Robert Park is? Robert Park was Booker T. Washington's ghostwriter. See the link go across?
I mean, this again, this whole thing could have the video essay could have been longer. I wanted to make it a little bit more what's the word? I was afraid if I would have went down certain rabbit holes, it would have been a little closed off or just too long. Every time I do one of these, I only want them to be 10 minutes. The last two have been about a half hour long. But I do have a challenge for everybody as I want to kind of move on. I know it's late for Pascal and we have another show to do tomorrow. Before we had the ability to use peer-to-peer payment systems, when you went out with friends, when you loaned people stuff, they paid you back when they paid you back, or it was no biggie, they'd get you back another way. Let's just try to not use these payment systems that even want to commodify basic relationships. Pascal, I'm sure you remember a time when you would go out with a friend and you'd chip in for gas money if you had it.
Mm.
And if you didn't have it, well, you'd get them the next time. Not a big deal. Life went on. Reading what happened in India and going back and watching the show we did with Corey Pine's wife, who was there when that happened. They just happened to be there when that whole thing happened. And remember her saying things like there was one cell phone in the area they were living in general. There was one ATM and the lines were, down the road. People literally killed themselves over that. And that's an experiment. The plan is to do it here. This isn't conspiracy talk. That's literally the plan. I got to read the transcripts of all those, funky ass financial meetings they were having. Jamie Dimon quotes and Bill Gates quotes and Barack Obama quotes on the idea of a cashless society.
Mm.
Coming here has been an eye-opening experience because I actually have to carry cash on me.
In Mexico?
Mm-hmm. I got to pay certain bills in cash. Before I leave to go see my son this weekend, I got to go pay my internet bill. I got to go pay it in cash. It's a very different kind of experience to have and still have relationships and friendships with people without always thinking about Venmoing them.
Right.
Or Square, well, that you guys call it Cash App, but it's actually called Square Cash because I was there when it rolled out. So, part of this show too is about rebuilding bonds that I think are broken by the system in which we live in, and that's kind of one of the more heinous things about these figures. These kind of what was it? What's his name? Nicole Ashcroft calls them the prophets of capital. Oprah Winfrey is one. The CEO of Whole Foods is another. Just because everything is sustainable and cage free doesn't mean you're making the world a better place. We're still overproducing on a whole nother level, regardless of how organic everything is.
So listen, Jason, I want to make just two brief announcements.
Sure.
Guys, if you want the book that was that PhD dissertation that I wrote that Black Eugenics piece on, I really suggest you get this. There's only one slight criticism I have about the book. It doesn't have an index. If it had an index, it would be gold. But get over that and just read the book. It is In Search of Purity, Popular Eugenics and Racial Uplift Among New Negroes, 1915 to 1935, by Dr. Chantella Yolanda Sherman. It's on Amazon. As a matter of fact, I think I want to put the link up here for Jason to share.
Mm-hmm.
You guys get that book. When you read this book, I have the book, I have the whole book. It's too disturbing for me to read in one sitting because you will learn how jacked up these Negroes were and how much they despised most black people. I mean, when I mean despised, ridiculous. I'm getting the piece right now. I'm going to put it in the chat.
Oh, M Tucson already did it.
Okay, good.
It's already in the chat.
Despised.
So you guys, the piece is in the chat. M Tucson already put it in the chat. M Tucson, could you pretty please put it in the comments as well?
One other thing. Shout out to Adolf and Tori Reed because I know we get a lot of hate. I appreciate the hate. We get a lot of hate because we like the reads. I want to be very transparent. Besides the fact that the analysis is good, I'm going to tell you why I like particularly Adolf's work and Tori's work. There's a reason why Adolf pisses off black people. Because Adolf Reed and Tori Reed talk about black politics and life from the perspective of people who understand how the ruling class looks at black people and uses things black people love to destroy them. And one of the reasons why they do that because Adolf's father and Tori's grandfather was a left communist academic, political scientist who was very respected, who also worked within the ruling class. I don't know if you guys know this, but Adolf's dad worked in the Kennedy administration. It's a fact. So they have an ability to analyze how the world is screwing Negroes with the stuff that Negroes love, that most Negroes hate hearing because they love the fuckery.
Shout out to Kenzo Shibata that's in the chat. Kenzo Shibata, student of Toure Reed. Also, shout out to Paul Prescott. Hopefully, we'll be seeing you in Philly, Paul, as we're trying to put together these New York and Philly live shows. I'll have some more information on that probably next month. A few months ago, a young lady came down here. She drove down per Ben Burgess. Her name is Janelle Jolly. She has a show called What's Left to Do where she interviews leftists. And Ben Burgess says, if you want to get a real interesting interview, I know this guy. He's kind of crazy as shit. His name is Jason Miles. You should interview him. So this young lady drove all the way down to Mexico to get into a fight with me at my house on my patio. We had a bit of a disagreement on race and class, and that's fine. But if you guys liked Pascal's life story that he told last week, you can hear my life story on what's left to do.com. I'll put a link up. If M Toussaint hasn't already put it up, let me know what you think. Definitely leave a comment if you heard the interview and was like, oh, that's interesting. I will say this. I never think people care about what I say. And then she posted the interview, and after she posted the interview, like the show got a little bigger, and I was like, oh wow, I said a lot of stuff in that in that interview. So it's a pretty it's I didn't hold back. She goes, you have the opportunity to not say anything, and I was like, nah, that's fine. You can hear it all. You can know the whole story. So you definitely hear about the first drug bust I ever saw to when I started off working in real estate and real estate finance and hired a homeless crackhead to be the front of the company because she was an adult and we were kids and no one would take us serious. It's an interesting conversation, to say the least. So please check that out, as I want to get more views on mine than Jamie Peck and Ben Norton. I mean, come on. I should have more views than Jamie Peck and Ben Norton.
I thoroughly enjoyed doing today's show.
Yeah, so I was gone off the screen for a while, guys, and I want to say on air, thank you, Pascal. My son Phoenix called.
That's always more important than this show.
And he has to show me what he's playing with. I'm gonna go see him this weekend, so I'm very, very, very excited.
Oh, you're not gonna be here Saturday?
Most likely not.
Okay.
We got to make sure Djene can do it. If not, I'll be here. But Saturday show's gonna be fun. We got Dwayne Monroe coming on Saturday. That's gonna be great.
Okay.
The brother from overseas.
Okay.
Yeah, Saturday shows. I'm not even worried about that. But thank you guys for checking out the video essay. Please do me a favor. Guys. Leave some comments on the video essay. It definitely helps the algorithm for whatever reason. Share it as much as possible. Get in arguments in the comment section if need be. I like to hear what you guys say. It definitely motivates the work that I do. I will throw this out there. Talking to Teray today on the phone. The next video essay that comes out next month will be about the second black exploitation era.
The 90s?
Yep.
We'll ride.
So that's going to be a juicy one. Trying to get some actors from that era to show up on the recap show from that. I sent an email out to. Do you remember the next Friday or Friday
Yeah,
after next, the last one? Remember the last one
that's
with
yeah,
Cat Williams?
yeah. Okay, oh yeah, okay, yeah.
You ever seen Soul Plane?
Yes, I remember Soul Plane.
Okay, the young lady from Soul Plane.
I saw the video you sent.
Yeah. So I sent a message. So we'll see. Let's cross our fingers and hope she shows up.
Are you trying to holler?
I no, I just want her opinion
Oh, okay.
on that era. I don't know her. I met her once though. Did meet her once in Vegas.
Yeah, y'all don't understand how it gets me geeked up to put the dots together to explain how these talented 10th Negroes were literally constructed to destroy black people. That really makes me feel good. I've been breaking my fraternity brothers' hearts like all week. Y'all have no idea.
Patrick says, please do an episode on White Men Can't Jump with the Red Zone. I know you don't take requests, but I'm just saying I'd love to. I'm trying to back out more with the Red Zone and leave it up with Mac and Marcus, and it's pretty much Mac and Marcus's show. But I will pass that along to those two guys because I know that's a movie they both have seen and we both commented on it. But the next video essay is going to be a lot of the stuff that we talk about from the moment that me and Pascal and Teray had a conversation together, which is the 80s and 90s, and then the images that came out of the 80s and 90s, and how we get to where we are now. Because unlike what you saw with the 70s and blaxploitation, where those people were pretty much blackballed, the majority of them, it's a little different in the 90s and 2000s. And of course, we're going to have a deep dive into why I have about a month to get everything done and out to you guys. So get excited. Call-ins tomorrow. Steve, we should be doing call-ins tomorrow. So if those of you that aren't patrons to the show, when we have these fun discussions, what we do is we go to our bonus Patreon champagne room, and we have a call-in segment for the whole champagne room time that we're there, and we don't really have a set time how long we're going to be there, and we take your phone calls, and we have a grand old time because I actually like phone calls. And also, we have the Mau Mau Hour with the Pascal Robert, and if you are a patron, we go live for patrons only. Pascal reads what he's upset about, and then you guys can challenge him or comment on what he has to say.
I'm thinking about possible subject for the Mau Mau. Haven't got one yet. It's a target rich environment. It's a target rich environment.
There's so many different ways.
That's
You know what
another
you're talking about for tomorrow?
That's another Bruce Dixon quote. It's a target rich environment.
Do you know you have your story for tomorrow's news roundup?
Not yet. That's not going to be hard to find. It was something.
Well, you know what? I have an idea because I know Born Center. Yes, there'll be a Saturday show. I most likely won't be here for the Saturday show because I'll be driving north. I hit up Asatar Bear because inflation is a mild hot button topic, but not as hot as I thought it would be. So I figured we bring in our favorite Marxist economists and talk about inflation. What do you think?
For Thursday?
Yep.
We can get him on such short notice?
Yep.
Is Kuba not coming Thursday?
He's busy. He's busy at the Death Star.
Oh, okay.
So I figured we let him do his Death Star thing.
Plotting third world death, things of that nature?
Oh, of course. Of
Gotcha.
course. Of course.
No, Asata Bear would be cool.
I mean, we can also have our own little side thing, right? We can talk to Asatar, have a topic that we want to cover for a little bit. I definitely have.
I thought we're not doing call-ins Thursday because we're not doing a patron section.
Oh, I did say that. So, Steve, I lied. Because of the show today, we're not going to do a call-in Thursday. I lied. It's my fault.
Jason, what do you think about getting Dr. Cornell West on the show, man?
On this show or doing it for real news?
That's the question.
Why don't we ask the people? What do you guys think about having us talk to Cornel West?
I've met Cornel West. I like him.
I mean, what do you guys like? What do you say? You guys, Gerald Horn. We've interviewed Gerald Horn before, or I have. I had Gerald Horn on the show early on. I wouldn't mind bringing him back on. Dr. Claus says yes. Get Cornel West. If we get 2 more yeses, then we'll reach back out to him.
Damn, we got a bunch of yeses.
Oh well, okay. Do it. Do it live. We're doing it live. What's not to like? Okay. Well, should we just hit him back up?
Yeah, he's on my email list.
Well, we also remember we were talking to him. Originally, Cornel West was going to be one of the people we interviewed for the Real News, and scheduling didn't work out.
Yeah, he was doing super black stuff for Black History Month.
It was Black History Month, man. We were not on the. Got some niggas on the payroll. We was not them cats. We was not them cats he was finna talk to right there.
I've met Cornel West. I emailed him. He knows who I am, man.
Well, we will go back and hit up Cornel West. We probably can get him for May. Let's cross our fingers.
That would be dope.
Let's talk about his interactions with Sister Soldier. Oh wow. I had to watch that for again the first time you were on the show. You probably don't even remember this because we had 2 parts of this show.
Yeah. And
we played the Donahue. I played the Sister Soldier clip from Donahue.
Hey man, go check out that Joy James interview, man. That's a good interview. We need more folks to circulate that.
I will be cutting clips from that probably a little later this evening after I get off with you guys. I'm going to be cutting clips. There's a clip dropping Friday from the Cedric Johnson episode. It's called "Is Black Power a Right-Wing Movement?"
Oh no, you're not going there.
Yeah. I figure we might as well piss Talib Kweli off. And then I'll have some clips from the Joy James interview from those of you that haven't seen it, and definitely have some clips from the OK Boomer episode.
I heard that it was on fire today at Jacobin.
Oh, well, I didn't get a chance to watch it.
Okay. I haven't watched it yet either, but I heard it was good.
But I'm excited. So, Pascal, thank you so much for taking over while I had to take that phone call.
No problem,
man. I think everyone loved your history on eugenics, colored eugenics. Thank you guys again. Leave a comment on the video essay. Go back and watch another video essay. I still think the best one I've done, because that footage is The Great Awakening, which was a Pascal essay.
Yeah, that was one of our first.
It's finding that John Wayne footage. Oh. And at the very end, where all them clowns sing. Oh. So, thank you guys so much. We'll see you tomorrow with Dr. Asatar Bear. And we are out.